I was born in Vienna on July 17th, 1927, and I grew up in Vienna in a typical Jewish middle-class family. And I had, of the parents, I had a big brother, I had many uncles and aunts, and I had friends that had both Jewish and non-Jewish. And overall, I would say I had a happy childhood. In March of 1938, Austria was annexed to Germany without any fighting. Germany just marched in, and we were welcomed by quite a few of the population. And at that time, life changed very radically. Whereas before, I thought Vienna, the greatest country in the world. After annexation, 2 months later, the son-in-law of our janitor came to the apartment where we lived, and he came and said, well, you Jews have had a good time and now it's our turn. He had been an illegal Nazi as such, he had special privileges, and said, I want your apartment. And when my father said, no, I mean, this is my apartment, he started hitting him, and my mother intervened, and there was no way of resisting. We knew, I mean, you cannot call the police, because the police would have been on his side. He was now the ruler. So that was probably the first and most traumatic experience in my childhood, that my father, who for me was a god, that here comes this man and hit him. And so that was the beginning, really, of realizing what was going on. If I had thought about it, what happened, and really think about it all the time, life would have been very, very hard. I would have been depressed all the time. I mean, and even today, you know, it's an extremely difficult thing to imagine. Imagine your government, you imagine your government comes and picks you up one day, puts you on a train to kill you. You say, yes, a robber may kill you to rob you, but the government, the people who are supposed to protect you, that they would do that. It's hard to believe, and even today I have a hard time to believe that the government would do it. And I know it happened, but you cannot cry all the time. And when I was a little boy, I was told boys don't cry. And so I never cried afterwards. I stopped crying. I mean, inside maybe I did, but never cried anymore. And I mean, I was probably as depressed as anybody who loses a parent. I'm sure that everybody does. And I didn't have a closure where you say, oh yes, there's a closure, you get used to the idea. No, I never got used to the idea, but I say that's a fact. And then as an engineer, you accept facts. You say, well, that happened. Okay, here, this is a street of the Kustotzergasse, which is the name of the street where I grew up. This is a building on the side, a building from the city, and here is the building where I lived. At the time, of course, there didn't used to be that many cars, hardly any. This is the entrance to the building, and I tried to go up. We lived on the 4th floor, and I tried to find the window, and which was, here is the entrance hall, the stair going up to the building. You have the rails. At the time, we did not have elevators like today. Here's the courtyard, and I remember sometimes musicians used to play in one of these windows upstairs. We threw them pennies down. Here again, going out of the building. I have heard about antisemitism because there was antisemitism in Vienna already at the time, but personally I didn't experience it, but I heard a lot about it. Well, in Austria, there had been a Nazi party, but it was illegal. So it was an underground Nazi party. And before the Anschluss, maybe in 1937 or so, they became already out in the open. It was a very a restless time. I mean, the Chancellor of Austria was assassinated in 1936. And at that time also, I started for the first time in my life to experience antisemitism. And one of the things is that at one time, and that may have been a few months before Austria was annexed, that the firebomb was thrown into the temple where I was praying. There was two young men on bicycles, and one threw a firebomb inside, and nobody was killed, but then obviously it was a traumatic experience. The big shift came in 1938. At that time, the Nazis and Hitler, as they always wanted to, what was called the Dritte Reich, or Großes Reich, they wanted to have again a German empire, with of course Germany dominating the world, but all German-speaking people should be part of Germany. And many of the Austrians themselves wanted to become part of Germany. Then came the 10th of November, or 9th of November, which is called Kristallnacht, which was a program organized all over Germany where thousands of synagogues were burnt. My father went out the next day to see what was going on, maybe visiting some customers, because he had a businessman who did relatively well even during the Depression. And when he was out on the street, he was arrested by two Nazi SA men, and he was taken to the concentration camp of Dachau. And Dachau is very famous now as a killing camp, but in the beginning, the Nazis just wanted to get rid of all Jews. They didn't want to, well, maybe they wanted to, but they didn't kill them systematically. If you could show that you were going to emigrate and leave the country, within a very short time, they released you. And we were, let's say my father and his twin brother, they both were in the same camp in Dachau, and they were released because they could show that they had both tickets to go to Shanghai. My father did not want to go to China, he wanted to go to America. He should have gone to Shanghai because the brother went to Shanghai and survived the war. My father instead could buy a transit a visa to Belgium. He went to Belgium waiting for a visa. That one of the big problems, of course, was Germany wanted to get rid of all the Jews, but nobody in the world wanted to accept the Jews. And America, where my father wanted to go, had a quota system, and he was told it would take 2 years before he gets a visa. So he went on transit to Belgium, supposedly only for 6 weeks, but we knew it would take, according to the promises of the American consulate, 2 years, and to wait there. World War II broke out. At first it was France and England against Germany. Belgium was neutral, but Germany attacked Belgium, and they overran Belgium. My father was arrested by the Belgians as an enemy alien, foreigner, because he originally had Austrians, and after annexation he became German, so he was Germany, the enemy who attacked Belgium, and even so really he was fleeing from the Germans. He was arrested as German and brought to various camps and ended up in southern France. Then we found out that he was in France, in southern France, and we tried to rejoin him, to be together as a family again. It took us a year before we really could rejoin my father in France, and you had to cross borders illegally, you had to bribe people and so on. But a year later, we ended up in France, where my father was. He was in a camp near Marseille. When we arrived, and of course we arrived illegally also, we were illegal foreigners, so we were also arrested, and we got into camps there. My mother and I in a camp for women and children, my brother in the same camp where my father was. My mother and I were in a place called Hotel Terminus des Ports. It was a flea bag hotel before the war, and once it was changed into a camp, it became even worse. But we were far away from the Germans. That was in the unoccupied part of France. I was full of hope. He said, yes, well, pretty soon we are going to go to America. So yes, you have a bad time, yes, yes, you don't have enough food, and we lived in one room. There were 3 women and I as a child together in one small room. But we lived, and I said, well, it's temporary, we are going to go to America. So I became a smuggler of bread to bring bread from Marseille, where you could buy it on the black market, to my father. And I was very proud because where in the past I'd always been a child. At that time I became a member of the family who could support, who did an important function. We didn't have enough to eat, but my father had even less, so my mother could buy bread on the black market. I went to visit him. My brother knew I was coming, so I had a backpack with bread and I threw it over the fence inside, and he took it, and then I could enter illegally through the gates where the guards were. In the camp, I mean, it was a miserable life already there, but I enjoyed seeing my father, being with my father again. So I saw him once maybe other week or every week. In the camps they had barbers, they had my hair cut there, and really looking back, it was tragic, it was a terrible life, but for me, no, I was with my father, I liked it. And again, there was hope. And that went on, waiting for the visa. The 2 years became 4 years. The visa didn't arrive. Actually, then America entered the war. And I might mention also, the visa didn't arrive because America had this terrible quota system where they let in maybe 50,000 Jews a year to emigrate to the United States. There were hundreds of thousands who wanted to go. So after 4 years, we hadn't gotten it yet. America entered the war because Japan had attacked the United States, and Japan and Germany were allies. One day, the camp where I was with my mother was also surrounded by Garde Mobile, which was a special auxiliary force of the French, and they took us to the camp where my father was, and at that time it was told that we would all be resettled to the east. Germany had asked the French to hand over all the foreign-born Jews, and the French, which was a collaborationist government, happily agreed with that they were going to do it. And we didn't know exactly what was going to happen. All we knew, we would be resettled in the east. And fortunately for me, in the very early stages, that was in August of 1942, they did not deport children, because the story that was told in part, oh yeah, that would be work camps, and they didn't take children. And so I could get out of this camp. I was taken out by a Jewish organization, which was called the OSE, to go into a children's home. I found out much later. But what really happened is to my parents is that the day after I was taken out of the camp, they were put on a cattle train. They were first going towards this camp in Paris, and then brought to the camp of Auschwitz, where they were immediately put into the gas chamber and murdered. So they were on a train of 1,000 people actually, and what I found out, really the details I found out only 30 or 40 years later, is that on arrival of this train, they took all the people over the age of 44 and put them immediately in the gas chambers and killed them. The people under 44 were put into work camps, and you might say these were the lucky ones, but really one person out of the 1,000 on this particular train is known to have survived the war. My story was, I was in a children's home, and very soon after I got into this home, the the French really started handing over children also to the Germans. There was all kind of hypocrisy in the beginning. They said, oh yes, we don't want to separate children from their parents. But in reality, I mean, if they had handed me over, I would have been killed at the same time as my parents were, because no children survived who were sent out to Auschwitz. No children survived. I was in this camp. I didn't know what had happened to my parents. I thought, yes, they were resettled. They probably are living. Even 3 years later, at the end of the war, I still had hoped. I knew at that time that of mass killings, but I still hoped, well, maybe my parents would survive. I was in the children's home. I was hiding there. During the day, I was cutting wood. At night, I was in a little building, always on the lookout, maybe for police who might want to arrest me. And after 6 months later, it was so dangerous that, again, it was organized for me to go from that children's home to another children's home in France, which was occupied by the Italians. The Italians were allies of the Germans, but because they were allies, they could say no to the Germans, to the Nazis, and they said, no, we do not hand over the Jews who would live in our place. So I lived in this Italian zone for a while. The people who really took care of me knew that our days would be numbered, so within a week they organized my escape to Switzerland, which was still a neutral country. The problem in Switzerland is Switzerland had a policy where they accepted political refugees. But at the time, and it changed during the war, at the time they accepted only children under 16. I was 16 years and 2 months old. So again, they had a forger. He had changed my official paper to make me 1 year younger. And I had a birth certificate. He had changed it from my birth year 1927 to 28. The border guard who had to make phone calls was told, yes, he had to leave me in. So I stayed first night, one night in a hotel where I spent all the money that I had, which was very little, but that I was from then on without a penny. The next day I was put into a jail where I stayed for a few days in jail. Then I got into an abbey where they were nice and they get me shoes that I could walk in again. Then I got into a quarantine camp to make sure that I didn't bring any disease into Switzerland. And then I was freed and got again into another children's home. But there were all kind of tests made, and they found out that, or they thought that I was gifted. And they said, well, this boy really should go to school. And I didn't have, I'd gone to school a little bit here and there, a few months here and there, but really for the 4 or 5 years I didn't have any regular schooling, but they said, well, he should go. And they sent me to another children's home in Geneva where I could go to a regular school again and catch up what I had missed. And I must say, that's the first time in 4 years that I really, I was relatively well off. There was enough food. I could sleep in a nice bed, in a nice children's home. And it's the first time it really hit me. Before I'd always hoped and looking forward to a future. And that's the first time when I really got depressed and realizing that what kind of a life I didn't have parents, I didn't have family, I didn't have friends. I was alone. I was, in a children's home. The other kids were not like me. They were also Jewish and not well off really, but better off than I was. And so all I did, I said, I'm concentrated on studying. And that's what I did for the next few years. I did well, and I could get a scholarship to a very prestigious school actually in Switzerland, the Swiss Institute of Technology, which is the equivalent of MIT here in the States. And I became an engineer. I found a job and the Swiss they tolerated me. And then I met a Swiss girl, and I got married there, and I had 2 children, and I was ready to settle in Switzerland and stay there till my wife knew some she had American friends, that she was in a park where she met them, and they said, oh, General Electric is looking for engineers, and they have somebody coming to Switzerland, and they make interviews. Why don't you ask Ted if he wants, maybe he should interview there. And I had kind of gotten the idea I'll stay in Switzerland, but I said, well, maybe I'll go for the interview. I knew that's where I always had hoped as a child to go to. They made me an offer to come to Lynchburg. And I said, I liked the idea of coming to the States, but Lynchburg, I thought of lynching, and that maybe that may not be the right place. But I was told, no, that's a nice place, don't worry about it. I came to Lynchburg, and Lynchburg was a very friendly town. People welcomed me here. And the first time really since I'd left Austria that people welcomed me and said, yes, we want you. A job, they wanted me. I joined the synagogue. The synagogue wanted me. I was a wanted person again, instead of being this unwanted person in Austria, or later the tolerated person in other countries. So I liked it here, and I stayed here, and I have lived here in the States for the last 60 plus years. I worked for over 25 years. I built a house. I worked in the Sandusky area here in Lynchburg. I have about a dozen patents. I was working as an electrical engineer, and in different fields, and I got patents in different fields. I got the first ones already in Switzerland, all for communication equipment. It spans a very wide variety of areas. I was never asked, what do you want to be? I didn't have a chance really of saying what I want to be, but they said, oh yeah, this guy, he would make a good engineer. So let's go ahead and study engineering. And if I had been asked, maybe I might have wanted to become actually the only thing that I was interested in after the war would have been maybe to become a psychiatrist. But nobody ever asked me. When I was with my parents, I was full of hope. Yes, it's a very bad period of time. Yes, I was hungry, but okay, so you're hungry one day. But in the future is going to be bright. I'm going to go to America. Yes, it's a beautiful country. I'm going to have a good life. I did not realize how bad the situation was. Yes, people get killed, but my parents are going to survive. 3 years after my parents had been killed, I lived in Switzerland. I knew that millions of Jews had been killed, but I said, who knows, maybe my parents, they are alive. In 1945, I looked all over, I had the Red Cross and so on. There were all kinds of services to look for living people. And I thought, well, I was looking for them. So I didn't really have this period of mourning because I didn't know that they were dead. And it sank in very gradually, very slowly. A year after the war ended, then they were officially declared dead because no trace of them. They had disappeared, they were put on a train, nobody knew what happened to them. They didn't even know that this train went to Auschwitz. It was 30 years later that the researcher, he made research in France. He found records of trains in France where they kept records very accurate of who was put on what train, and they found, yes, there was a train number 19, actually, train number 19 of the convoys of trains who went from Paris-Drancy to Auschwitz. And he found out train number 19 arrived or left Drancy on August the 15th or whatever, and there, and on arrival, this is what happened, and in this book, it's like a telephone book, and it's very short in a way, but the names of my parents are listed. So see, here's Baruch Brenig, born in Dobromil, and that Austrian citizen, and Gittel Brenig. So my parents are listed in this train, which has left and arrived there. But I didn't have this period of mourning because I didn't know that they were on this train. I had no idea what happened to them. Later on, when I realized, when they were declared dead and I was in Switzerland at the time, all I did was study. I didn't want to think about it. I said, I want to forget that time. I was just studying. Of course, I had relatives. I mean, my brother survived the war. And I mean, yes, we talked about it. I mean, I had friends who survived the war. Yeah, we talked a lot about the Holocaust. But to other people, I never talked about them. I wanted to be a normal person like anybody else, like I had grown up in. Even when people asked me, where are you from? And I said, from Austria. Oh, what a beautiful country and how friendly the people are. And I said, okay, I didn't say what the Austrians did to me. And I must say, today I know Austrians, I know Germans, and I don't hold it against any of the descendants, because they're very, very nice people and I like them. After the war, I wanted to forget the whole thing. I didn't want to think about Austria, I didn't want to think about Germany. I wanted to be a normal person, I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't want to be a Holocaust survivor. I just wanted to be Ted Brenig, engineer, tennis player, bridge player, a hiker, because I became a member of the Appalachian Trail Club. I just wanted to be a normal person. And it's much, much later, maybe 20, 40 years ago, that suddenly there was this renewed interest in the Holocaust. And now I have given a number of interviews, and in part it is because people say they deny even that the Holocaust, that there was a Holocaust. And I say, no, there was a Holocaust, yes, and I've lived it. I didn't talk about it. I cannot show here the grave of my parents and they were killed. There is no grave. There's no proof. The only proof that I have is one book, like a telephone book, like a Manhattan telephone directory, and the name is listed. They were on a transport from Drancy to Auschwitz. That's all I have. That's the only proof that I had that they lived and were killed. Basically, I don't understand people. I say the life would be so easy if everybody would live at peace. I don't see why would people want to do war against each other. I know that most people that I've met in my life, if they have been taught the right values as children, are nice people. I meet here, I'm living here at the summit, everybody is nice. I've met in all my life, I meet people, but everybody's nice to me. And nobody, it seems like people like me, nobody hates me. And why did at one time, when I was a child, why did a government and all the people around me decide I'm a terrible person and I should be killed? I can't understand it. And I know at the same time, if people learn to hate, that's what they do, they hate. And why do people make war? I mean, it's so much easier to live in peace than to make war. And here you have wars, people fight each other. At the end of the war, they make peace. Maybe it takes, after millions of people have been killed. And the peace treaty in the end is, oh yeah, let's live in peace together. They could have decided that before they started killing each other. So basically, I don't understand why you have wars. At the same time, I understand, yes, you have to have wars, because one thing that I learned in the Holocaust, yes, there are people who are evil and who want to kill you. And if you don't defend yourself, and that's what happened to many of the Jews during the Holocaust, if you don't have the weapons to defend yourself, they'll kill you. So yes, if somebody wants to kill you, yes, you have to say, okay, I take arms and I defend myself. Very often you cannot avoid avoid fighting and you cannot avoid going to war. Why don't people who are so intelligent, who can send a man to the moon, conquer the universe, why can't they understand that it is much smarter to live in peace with your neighbor? That I can't understand. And it's a fact of life that from the beginning of time, people have wars and wars and wars. One thing is, don't do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. So, and speak up when you see that injustice is performed, when you see somebody is bullying somebody, and especially when you say a lesson that would be especially for kids, you see some kid in school gets bullied, stand up for the kid who gets bullied. Stand up for him, speak up. I'd like to quote, actually, there's a German pastor by the name of Niemöller. In the beginning, he supported the Nazis, because Nazis were not all only about killing Jews. They had good programs and say, oh, they built the Autobahn. Yes, and it's true, the Autobahn is a great achievement, it's good. But you can do good things and bad things. His quote is that when they went first for the socialist, I was not a socialist, so I didn't speak up. And then they went for the trade unionists, and I said, I'm not a trade unionist, so I didn't speak up. And then they went in a whole series of things. I was not that, so I didn't speak up. They went after the Jews. They said, I was not a Jew, so I didn't speak up. And they said, and then they went after me, and after his church, he was a pastor. But there was nobody left to speak up for me. So think, yes, when you see somebody bullied, or see somebody being persecuted, speak up and fight for the people who are doing wrong, to stand up for justice, stand up for right. Even if it doesn't concern you, if you see, oh yes, this guy does something wrong, but it's not my business. Don't say it's not my business, it is your business. Stand up when you see injustice and try to be just.